List comprehensions are an extremely powerful feature of Python. In the last video, we saw how we could use the map function to take a function called triple and apply it to all of the values in a list of numbers. And we had to have the function defined already. We assumed it was in a file, and then we were able to go ahead and use map to apply that function to a list of integers. And we ended up with a result in which each of the integers was tripled. So that works just fine, but it turns out list comprehensions allow us to do this much more easily. We don't need a separate function. Instead, this is all you need. This expression will give us the same exact result. Now let's look at what you need when you're forming a list comprehension. Inside the square brackets, you need some expression followed by the keyword for, followed by a variable, followed by the keyword in, and then some sequence of values. So in our case, the expression was 3 times x, the variable was x, and the sequence was this list of integers. And what's going to happen is the variable takes on each value in the sequence one at a time. And for each of those values, we end up producing the result of this expression. And that gets output and is put in a list of results. So when x is 0, we're going to output 3 times 0, or 0, and that's the first element in the result list. When x is 1, we output 3 times 1, and we do this for each of the values in the original sequence. And so that gives us a new sequence in which each value from the original sequence has been tripled. Now, the name of that variable, it sometimes is called a runner variable because it's running down the sequence. It doesn't have to be called x. We can use any reasonable variable name for that runner variable. Now, here's some other examples. So here, the sequence that we're using is being supplied by range. And if you remember, range 1, 5 is going to give you the list of integers from 1 to 4. And then what we're doing is we're letting n take on each of those values, and for each of those values we're getting the result of this expression. So when n is 1, we're going to get 111 times 1. When n is 2, 111 times 2, or 222. When n is 3, we get 333. When n is 4, 444. Here's one in which we're operating on a list of strings. For each string in this list, we're going to output the first character, S0, from that string. And so we end up with this result. Now, it's also possible for your list comprehension to have an additional component at the end, which is an if, followed by a Boolean expression. So for example, we might have something that looks like this. Here again, we're using range. And range in this case is giving us the list of integers from 0 to 5. Now, instead of getting a result for each of those values, we're only going to get a result if the Boolean condition is true for that particular value. So in this case, my Boolean expression is x mod 2 is equal to 0. And remember, mod gives us the remainder of a division, and so this expression is only going to be true if x is even. So it'll be true for 0, because 0 mod 2 is 0. It's true for 2, 2 mod 2 is 0, etc. And so only for those even numbers are we going to get a result here. And the result is 2 times the original number. Here's another example. This time I'm operating on a list of strings. My Boolean condition is the length of the string must be 3 in order for me to produce a result for it. And so I'm only going to get results for these first 2 strings. And in this case, you can see my expression is just y. So I'm not changing the string. I'm just deciding whether or not to include it. So if it does have a length of 3, it's going to be included. If it doesn't, I'm not going to include it.